Alright, this is a video to Hythlobjection. Okay, Hythlobjection, I don't know why you object. Look, I'll take the heat. Let's just say it's me. Okay, but so you know where I'm kind of coming from and things. I think you should be complimented. That you should feel complimented. That I even try to use your model. You go to that work to make that model, and they're like, hey, I can talk in this language. You know, when you make an analogy, and you know what? This is not math school, okay? I took, in college, I got my philosophy degree. I took full-time math and physics for the first 2.5, 3 years. Okay, 3 in the case of mathematics. Enough to declare, you know, full-time math. Then I had to finish my own degree. But it was a long time ago, and you know, I don't know, I use a word like constraint, and you go, mathematical constraint. I say, it's limited by those things. It's not a limit. Okay, so let's just be real clear with some of the math terms, that they have natural language meaning, okay? But really, I'm at a loss why you said you object to me using your analogy as a model. First of all, in this context, there's no distinction between it being a model versus an analogy. It's a little mini language that we can use to discuss this. And frankly, I thought it was a great one because I thought the piecing together of the Duplo blocks, I just think it's funny, I know what those are called. Okay, you know, it's a good analogy or model or metaphor for logic that I thought people that aren't going to read as closely as you, having recently got your math degree and been into this kind of thing, you know, would still get the concept basically, right? And the ideas involved. And I thought you also covered like all the important elements, like the big, a little bit more complicated blocks that don't fit through constraints are second order things, right? Some, not all. You know, and the big old things that can't go through all at once, completeness. I thought I said this in both my videos, and then you complain I didn't bring up completeness. Yeah, I thought I brought up completeness. I thought we weren't talking about it before, too much. You talked about it a little bit. We mentioned it. Then I went through the 3 theorems that we're basically talking about. The first one is the completeness theorem. Then the other 2 are the incompleteness theorems. You know, and I mentioned, right? And isn't this true? I mean, and if all you have to do is don't object, just correct. It's like, no, that isn't that. This isn't that. On the other hand, you didn't really identify the constraints as subject to the discussion, and that is what we were discussing: is how do you establish the constraints? That's the question. In terms of the Hilbert program, right? Can you do that? And Gödel's theorem about first and second order logic argue no, you can't. Not the way Hilbert wanted to, at least. Other people have made systems that try to do something similar, but then that system is subject to Gödel's incompleteness theorem. And basically, we're just in a situation that any complex rule system needs other rules, these axioms, in order to work. And they'll need another system, and they'll need another system, just like all syllogistic argument goes back to you need to start from some assumptions. And then this is interesting in Penrose's take, since it's just his take. It's not like every mathematician agrees with him, or physicist, or anybody. I don't know anybody who really agrees with him. He's way too Platonic for me. But he's making a good point going, yeah, so those things we start from, you know, they actually are justified. We just don't know how they're justified yet. And he calls that understanding. He says there's some way to understand those. And I could think of quantum computing and trial by error algorithms, Turing computing, that could come up with axioms through trial and error. And I think that's where we are. And if we want to forget the consciousness type conversation for just a moment, a sentence or two. That's where we are. We have trial and error evolved axioms with which we can build mathematics. How did we find those? Well, we tested them in nature. So there's a lot more subtle questions like, well, with what kind of computation, what kind of physics, how do we work? But we do pretty much know we tested those in nature. They didn't come from God. They weren't automatically true. They're not even beyond improvement. Axioms actually evolve just more slowly because you start off with one that seems really solid. So it's solid, but it's still going to last you 1,000 years or something. Then you're going to go, oh, we got to tweak this or tweak that or understand this different or put it into a new mathematical system that changes how it works just a little bit. You know, and often those tweaks don't take, right? Like there's modal logic and all kinds of logical systems and modified conditionals and, you know, but pretty much we've just been using the first order one seem to work the best so far. So that axiom, people are trying to change it, seeing things that needs to change, and still it's like, well, it's been most useful in this form. But mostly I want to make this video real quick because I don't want to get off on the wrong foot. I want to be able to continue this conversation. And if we have another thing like we've had years ago where I say something and you get offended, you should be honored or whatever. I was willing, you created a little language with the blogs, and I am willing and giving you praise for doing that, and I'm willing to use that. If you think I got some of the terms wrong, fine. But I'm a little concerned that the objection isn't about that the objection is that you saw what I'm claiming. I'm claiming that if you use a model like yours, then the way to express what I'm claiming is my understanding of Gödel proved is about those constraint systems. Now, in the completeness theory, he proved that all first-order logic can go through the first-order constraints. But when turning to establishing those first-order constraints, he found, no, the things that go through the constraints are not sufficient to prove the constraints. Right? That's what I think. Now, you can correct my understanding of the terms, you can, you know, but part of it is this, that's what I'm believing. Separate from meeting you and talking to you about it, that's my understanding of it. That's what I think I was taught about it. That's what it seems to me when I read about it. And it's somewhat compatible, as I said, with the more ancient and intuitional logic, just an inductive logic, that if all logic is basically syllogistic, you know, like the old simpler, you know, Aristotelian approach, it's all syllogistic more or less. Well, those always start from assumptions, so inductively, if you go prove those assumptions, then you're always going to have more. And the idea that it stops somewhere is like counter-inductive. On the other hand, I think it's great that mathematicians tried to pursue finding that and pursue that self-proof, you know, because I've seen some amazing things that I would not have thought of happen in the world, and people have crazy ideas and prove them, and that would have been very interesting, right? And Gödel basically proved it was impossible at a higher level, basically, for systems at a time, and with respect to how systems interact, a more complex analysis of logic than just saying, oh, that's all syllogistic, so it must all go back to assumptions. Okay. So, yeah, if you object to that video, then you should go through the first part of it where I say, here's what these are supposed to mean, that's what I think these are supposed to mean, and here's what you do, and they go through here. I don't get it. I thought I did. I perpetuated your analogy. And I'm assuming now that you think that I argued something with your analogy you disagree with, and somehow that's bothered you. Or maybe it's just the language in your comments, and maybe now I'm getting bothered, and you haven't really got bothered, but you used the word object, and I'm going, oh no. But whatever. Just calm down if you need to. If you're already calm, fine, I'll be calm. But at the very least, you should take it as either a compliment or a concession by me that I'm like, okay, you set up this little language, and I will try to speak within it. But it's also a compliment because I didn't just go, oh, well, this is an insufficient way to talk about it, but I'll do it anyway. I thought, hey, this could be a really good way to talk about it, so let's not fail a good method because, I don't know, I saw something, I don't know. It seems like an excellent set of elements to discuss this with. And the constraints are on the table because, that's the Hilbert program, was to establish that those constraints could be built out of the things that go through. So sure, you need the axioms, to start with, but you can't show that they're provable by the things that go through the system, at least. And get kind of an analytic handle on the a priori. Okay, I don't believe in the a priori, so to me it's interesting, and this is what we're talking about now. Oh yeah, I keep calling those constraints. I'll use whatever words you want. The tunnel. Let's just call it the tunnel. Because I have a feeling, you hear constraints or the word limit, or you go off on super mathematical interpretation. I'm just talking about it's a tunnel. And that Gödel's theorem is saying that tunnel can't be built out of the things that can go through it. It needs some of the things that can't fit through it in order to prove it. All right, cheers.